Imagine getting reincarnated into a romance novel, not as the heroine, not as the villain, not even as an important side character, just an ordinary office worker. Her only goal is to survive, avoid overtime, and live a peaceful life. But one small act of kindness toward a mysterious stranger changes everything. Now, without realizing it, she's caught the attention of the most dangerous man in the empire, and her quiet life is about to spiral completely out of control. Here's what happened. In the beginning of the manhwa, the narration tells us that just because someone is reincarnated into a novel doesn't mean they automatically become the protagonist. Some become legendary heroes after enduring countless hardships. Some villains seize power with their own hands. But there are also extras, people who become neither heroes nor villains and simply live as ordinary citizens. And honestly, that's not such a bad thing. A stable job, a small but cozy house, a loving family, and friends you can always be honest with. Now we meet our female protagonist, Rina. Rina is sharing an intimate moment with her boyfriend. He tells her to wait for a moment, but in her mind, she can't stop thinking about how cute and handsome he is. She feels like she could cherish him forever. Confused, Rina asks why he keeps telling her to wait. They've only held hands this whole time. Is he really planning to wait until their wedding for their first kiss? Hearing her question, the man admits that isn't the issue. There's something he hasn't told her yet. Rina gently reassures him that it's okay. No matter what it is, he can tell her later. Instead, she reaches out, pulls him closer, and tells him to give himself to her. Unable to resist any longer, the man wraps his arms around Rina and pulls her close. He gently lifts her into his arms, making her feel as though she's melting. Carefully placing her on the bed, he promises to give her everything. And just like that, their relationship takes a major step forward that night. Although Rina never intended for things to progress so quickly, she wonders if it even matters. She was just an ordinary woman with nothing particularly special about her besides having a handsome boyfriend. Even so, her life was peaceful, ordinary, and safe. To her, that was the most satisfying life she could ever ask for. She truly believed that. But then, someone suddenly shouts, "Where are you going, Rina? Are you planning to seduce the emperor and run away?" That single moment completely changes Rina's life. Now we finally see how everything actually began. Inside the Regency Empire's imperial palace, specifically the Treasury Department, countless officials are busy with their work. Suddenly, someone angrily calls out to Carolina Diaz. "Miss Carolina Diaz, are you seriously joking around with me right now?" This was the daily chaos of Rina's life. Rina is immediately called over by the head of the department. "Take a look at the documents you submitted yesterday." He throws the paperwork onto her desk. The tax records from the Allborn territory are completely missing. His Majesty's triumphal ceremony is less than a week away. Before the official affairs begin, every department must submit its reports. "Are you trying to drag the Treasury Department's name through the mud?" Rina immediately apologizes. She explains that she never intended to cause any problems and promises to reorganize everything before resubmitting the report later that day. However, the department head shows no patience at all. Before leaving, he coldly orders her to finish fixing everything before lunch. Without saying another word, Rina quietly returns to her desk. A coworker notices what happened and asks if she's all right. This coworker is Rina's close friend and fellow Treasury Department employee, Connie. Connie angrily points out that the department head was the one who deliberately told Rina to leave those documents out in the first place. She saw it herself, so she doesn't understand why he's blaming Rina now. Trying to cheer her up, Connie suggests they go to a pub after work. Rina smiles and happily agrees. Deep down, though, Rina isn't nearly as upset as everyone expects. Compared to her previous life, this is nothing. Back then, dealing with impossible workloads, abusive bosses, workplace harassment, and malicious complaints had become completely normal. Compared to all of that, this situation barely bothered her. Not long ago, Rina had recovered the memories of her previous life. She had once been an ordinary civil servant who literally worked herself to death before being reincarnated as Carolina Diaz, a completely insignificant side character in this novel. She was nothing more than an extra. Her name was never even mentioned in the original story. Even now, she was still just a low-ranking employee working in the Imperial Palace. Surprisingly, she liked this life much more. At least it was peaceful and stable, and she wasn't forced to work overtime every single day. The original novel was a romance between a tyrannical, war-crazed emperor and a bright, saint-like heroine. After dying, the heroine received a divine blessing and was reincarnated into a second life. She met the male lead, entered a contract relationship with him, eventually fell in love for real and finally found happiness. It was a classic romantic fantasy. But from the perspective of an extra like Rina, romance wasn't important. Simply surviving each day mattered far more. If there was one thing she wished for in this new life, it was simple. She wanted to work normally, retire safely, and enjoy a peaceful old age with enough retirement savings. Of course, she wasn't completely uninterested in dating. But there were no opportunities and no suitable people around her. As long as she didn't die from overwork again like in her previous life, she already considered herself lucky. By the end of the day, Connie apologizes. They're officially stuck working overtime again. Their unreasonable department head has dumped even more work on them. There's no way she'll finish everything before morning. At this rate, she'll probably have to stay up all night. Connie tells Rina to head home without her. Now unexpectedly free, Rina decides to take a relaxing walk through the park, look at some stray cats, and buy dinner on the way home. While passing a flower shop, she notices a rare bouquet of freesias. These flowers are difficult to find during this season. Thinking they'd look beautiful by her window, she decides to buy them. Inside the shop, she asks for the freesias. The shopkeeper is pleasantly surprised that Rina even knows the flowers by name. She explains that they were brought in from the northern part of the capital and that this is the very last batch available. Rina happily decides to take them. She imagines how beautiful they'll look sitting by her window when the sunlight shines through them. Just then, a tall and incredibly handsome man approaches the counter. He politely asks the shopkeeper if they still have any freesias available. Rina can't help staring at his breathtaking appearance. Before she realizes it, the man notices her. Sometimes, the greatest moments of chaos arrive without warning. And sometimes, they don't just disrupt your daily life. They completely change it. Rina stands there in silent amazement, unable to take her eyes off the unbelievably handsome stranger. Rina couldn't help thinking that the man looked like the sun itself. Noticing her staring, the man adjusted the scarf around his head, making sure his appearance was properly covered. Embarrassed, Rina quickly looked away. The man turned back to the shopkeeper and asked once more if there were any freesias left. The shopkeeper shook her head. "I'm sorry, but that was our last batch. The freesias are completely sold out." She then pointed toward Rina. The last bouquet was sold to this young lady. The man asked if any other flower shops nearby might have them. The shopkeeper explained that freesias were both rare and out of season, so it would be extremely difficult to find them anywhere else. Hearing this, Rina called out to him. "It seems like you need these flowers more than I do. If you're willing to accept them, you can have them instead." She explained that she wasn't buying them for any special reason and would be happy to give them to him. The man gratefully accepted her kindness. "Thank you very much. I'll be sure to repay your generosity someday." After saying that, he placed a heavy bag of coins on the counter and instructed the shopkeeper to charge him for every flower the young lady wanted to buy. Without waiting for a response, he quietly walked away. Rina tried to stop him, but he didn't even look back. When the shopkeeper opened the bag, she was stunned. It was filled with gold coins. Rina left the flower shop carrying an entire basket of flowers. Although she felt embarrassed accepting such an extravagant gift, she couldn't refuse after seeing how happy the shopkeeper looked. She definitely didn't need this many flowers. As she walked home, she couldn't help thinking about the mysterious man. He was certainly unique. It was the first time in her life she had ever seen someone so unbelievably handsome. His way of speaking was blunt and somewhat stiff. Perhaps he was a soldier who had only recently returned from war. At the same time, the way he casually handed out such an enormous amount of money to a complete stranger made him seem like someone from a noble family. Rina smiled to herself. She wondered if she'd ever get another chance to meet someone so stunning. Her daily routine consisted of nothing more than going back and forth between work and home. Having a small, heart-fluttering moment like this made her otherwise ordinary day feel special. As she continued walking, Rina suddenly spotted the same man again. She was shocked to run into him twice in a single day. He was standing outside the entrance to the park, holding the freesias along with a small teddy bear. Rina guessed that he was probably planning to visit the public cemetery inside the park. However, she knew the main entrance was currently closed due to construction. She hurried over and called out to him. Startled by the sudden approach, the man instinctively reacted. Thinking someone was attacking him, he grabbed Rina's arm before realizing who she was. Rina winced in pain. The man immediately asked, "Is there something you need from me? Is there a reason you came looking for me?" Rina quickly explained that she had only wanted to let him know the park's main entrance was closed because of the construction work. "If you're trying to enter the park, you'll need to use the gate on the opposite side. The park will be closing soon, so you should hurry." The man looked surprised. "You came all this way just to tell me that? I honestly had no idea. Thank you very much." Rina smiled politely. "It was nothing, really." She raised her hand to say goodbye. Only then did the man notice the bruise forming where he had grabbed her arm. "Please let me see your hand for a moment." Confused, Rina insisted she was perfectly fine. But the man gently replied, "Did you think I was the kind of person who would ignore someone after hurting them and simply walk away?" Rina fell silent. After examining her arm, he nodded. "It doesn't look like anything is broken or fractured. However, the swelling has already started. You'll probably have a large bruise for a day or two." He then told her that he would send word to the temple so she could receive proper treatment. "Go there tomorrow morning. Simply mention the name Rainier Rojas, and they'll take care of everything." With that, he quietly left. Watching him disappear, Rina finally realized the mysterious man's name was Rainier Rojas. She couldn't help thinking it was quite a unique and memorable name. Later that night, Rainier arrived at the cemetery. He gently placed the teddy bear and the bouquet of freesias in front of a grave before quietly paying his respects. As he was leaving, someone called out to him. "Your Majesty," the man asked, "have you finished taking care of everything you came here to do?" Rainier looked at him. "How did you know I was here?" The man answered without hesitation. "There was no way I wouldn't notice when your Majesty disappeared from your post. Besides, today marks the anniversary of her passing." He then continued, "Your Majesty, with all due respect, what you did today was reckless. The triumphal ceremony is only a few days away. What would have happened if something had gone wrong while you were walking around alone without a single guard?" Rainier calmly replied, "Nothing like that would ever happen to me." The man respectfully bowed his head. "I don't doubt your Majesty's strength in the slightest. Even so, please be more careful from now on." After a brief pause, he asked, "Nothing unusual happened while you were away, did it?" Rainier thought quietly for a moment. The only thing that came to mind was Rina. Her smiling face flashed through his thoughts. A faint smile appeared on his lips. Nothing happened. Meanwhile, Rina looked down at the bruise on her arm. "It's practically healed already," she thought. "I really don't need to visit the temple." A simple ointment that cost only 1 silver coin had already made it much better. Of course, the temple could have healed it instantly through divine power. However, the temple charged the same donation fee regardless of whether the injury was minor or severe. That amount was far beyond anything Rina could afford. Half of her yearly salary would disappear in an instant. She sighed. Does that man not understand how expensive the real world is? Then she smiled to herself. Well, with a face like that, maybe he really doesn't. Just then, someone suddenly shouted across the office. "Rina, this is urgent. When exactly are you planning to submit this? Do you want to write another apology letter?" Connie immediately apologized to the supervisor. The man simply replied, "Forget the apology. Just bring me the paperwork." And just like that, another exhausting day in Rina's life as an ordinary office worker began. As usual, Rina and Connie are buried under an impossible amount of paperwork. Connie sighs in frustration. "Sanjay has completely lost his mind. He expects me to organize 8 years' worth of tax records from 7 different territories in a single day. Why doesn't he just hold my funeral while he's at it?" Rina agrees that he's clearly in a terrible mood. Connie nods. "He's been unusually sensitive lately. He's normally not like this." Rina asks if it's because of His Majesty's upcoming triumphal ceremony. "Of course it is," Connie replies. "A while ago, he kept bragging that he had managed to build connections with the Duke of Camelot's faction. That's probably why he's so nervous now." Rina looks confused. "The Duke of Camelot?" Connie explains that the Duke is the head of the Western noble faction and the second most powerful person in the empire after the Emperor himself. Still puzzled, Rina asks, "What does that have to do with the triumphal ceremony?" Connie is shocked that Rina hasn't heard the rumors. The entire imperial palace is talking about it. As soon as His Majesty returns, they're saying he's going to purge the Duke of Camelot. And not just him. They say the Emperor plans to use this opportunity to eliminate all the nobles who spent the war enriching themselves. The wyverns who ruled while the dragon was away are finally going to pay the price. Rina silently thinks about the Emperor. At this point in the story, he is still the ruthless tyrant from the original novel. He seized the throne after purging the late Emperor and the royal family. Then he spent 8 years leading countless wars and staining the battlefield with blood. Before meeting the heroine, he was exactly the kind of ruler capable of carrying out such a purge. Rina's greatest concern isn't politics. She's worried that the conflict might spread to the Treasury Department and destroy the peaceful life she's worked so hard to build. She silently prays that everything will pass without affecting her. Meanwhile, Connie has only one wish. I just want the triumphal ceremony to arrive already. She sighs dramatically. Once it's over, maybe we'll finally escape all this overtime. Sometimes, she even finds herself tearing up just thinking about it. After working for quite a while, Rina finally finishes her assignments. She turns to Connie with a smile. I'm done. If you need help, I'd be happy to give you a hand. Connie's eyes immediately light up. She throws her arms around Rina. You're the only one I have. Even if I have no money, no future, and no title, I'll always choose my best friend. Rina laughs. Stop saying such depressing things. Let's just finish the rest of the work. Rina looks over the documents on Connie's desk. Wait. These records are from the Western Territory. Aren't you supposed to be in charge of the Eastern Territory? Connie lets out another frustrated sigh. I know. Sanjay dumped all of this on me without any explanation. Rina wonders if the work was divided that way on purpose. Connie nods. The official responsible for the Western Territory is Lord Andrew Nocton. Sanjay probably pushed all of his work onto me because he thinks I'm an easy target. This isn't the first time he's done something like this. Everyone in this department is working themselves to death because of him. Rina agrees that the person in charge should have handled these documents instead. Still, there isn't anything particularly difficult about the work itself. Together, the two of them finish everything. The next day finally arrives. It's the long-awaited weekend. Rina couldn't be happier. And she isn't the only one looking forward to it. The stray cats that Connie and Rina often visit are waiting as well. Rina smiles as she arrives at the park. After another exhausting week of work, spending time with the cats feels incredibly healing. She feeds each of them before sitting beside the fountain. Lately, she's been forced to work almost every weekend, so it's been a long time since she was able to relax like this. She still has errands to run and groceries to buy later. But for now, she's perfectly happy sitting there and watching the adorable cats play around her. Suddenly, a small black kitten jumps up and scratches someone nearby. Startled, Rina quickly runs over. To her surprise, the person the kitten attacked is none other than Rainier. The kitten immediately runs back toward Rina. Anyone watching would naturally assume she owned the cat. Rina quickly bows her head. I'm so sorry. It's a stray cat that lives here in the park. It's still young, so it doesn't know any better. She repeatedly apologizes for the scratch on his clothes. However, Rainier doesn't respond. Without saying a single word, he simply turns around and walks away. Rina stands there in confusion. Why did he ignore her? Why did he leave without saying anything at all? Rina was stunned. How could someone ignore another person so bluntly? It wasn't as if they were friends. But the way Rainier had treated her was simply too much. His expression made it seem as though he was annoyed by her, as if she were nothing more than a pest buzzing around him. Rina shook her head. She was probably overthinking it. There was no point dwelling on it now. She still had groceries to buy before heading home, and after today, she probably wouldn't run into him again anyway. But just then, she spotted Rainier once more. He was standing nearby, talking to another man. Without thinking, Rina quickly hid behind a tree. The moment she did, she realized how strange that looked. I didn't even do anything wrong, she thought. Hiding just makes me look suspicious. Embarrassed, she decided to leave the area with at least a little dignity and hurried away. However, Rainier noticed her before she disappeared. A little later, Rina stepped out of a bakery carrying several bags of fresh bread. She had gone on another impulse shopping spree. It was an unexpected expense, but she decided it was completely worth it. She planned to finish cleaning her house before enjoying a relaxing evening. Lost in her own thoughts, she suddenly ran into Rainier yet again. He looked at her with a slightly annoyed expression. "It seems we keep running into each other far too often," he said. "What business do you have with me?" This time, Rena completely ignored him. She didn't even bother replying. Instead, she made a slightly annoyed face and walked straight past him. In her mind, she thought, "So he wants to pretend he doesn't know me? Fine, I can play that game too." A moment later, he quietly continued on his way. Soon, Rainier entered a restaurant. The place wasn't very busy, with only a few customers inside. As soon as he sat down, the owner approached him. "Shall I bring your usual, Your Majesty?" Then he added, "What brings you here at this hour? Is this about Duke Camelot? I still haven't finished organizing the files." Rainier calmly looked at him. "Kyle, do you believe in coincidences?" Kyle looked curious. "What do you mean?" Rainier explained. "For example, if I happened to run into the same woman every time I left the Imperial Palace, and it happened several times in a single day, could that truly be a coincidence?" Kyle immediately became serious. "Do you suspect she's an assassin or a spy?" Rainier thought for a moment. "Honestly, I don't know. She certainly doesn't seem like one." He remembered the moment she had rushed toward him. She had clearly shown no intention of attacking him. Her hands had obviously never held a sword. Instead, she had approached him without the slightest bit of caution, looking at him with innocent curiosity. Rather than an assassin or a spy, she reminded him of a small puppy that had been lovingly raised by a noble family. After a brief silence, Rainier said, "I need to find out whether these meetings are the will of heaven or the will of man." Kyle nodded. "I understand. I'll investigate." With that, Kyle excused himself to greet the other customers. Left alone, Rainier looked around the cafe. "It's strange," he thought. "This place is always full of customers, even though the coffee tastes terrible." The truth, however, was simple. Most of the customers came because Kyle himself was so handsome. Meanwhile, Rainier sat quietly in the corner. The only person on his mind was Rena. Who exactly is that woman? Meanwhile, Rena was as busy as ever. The workload at the Ministry of Finance never seemed to end. No matter how many documents everyone finished, another pile immediately appeared. At this rate, Rena felt like she was going to work herself to death all over again. Something felt different today, though. Sanjay was unusually quiet. Normally, he would have turned the entire office upside down by now. Instead, he looked as though he were being haunted by something. Suddenly, a group of soldiers marched into the ministry. "Everyone, stay where you are. Move against the walls immediately." The office instantly fell silent. The soldiers announced that they had come to arrest everyone involved in Duke Camelot's bribery scheme and the creation of illegal slush funds. Rena was shocked. None of the employees fully understood what was happening. However, everyone knew one thing. If crimes like these had been committed, Sanjay had to be involved. And this was no minor offense. The employees immediately begin whispering among themselves. "The inspection team is involved? This can't be an ordinary investigation. Why isn't Sanjay saying anything? Why is he just standing there?" The lead inspector steps forward and looks directly at Sanjay. "Are you the head of the Treasury Department?" Sanjay nervously nods. The inspector begins reading the official charges. "According to the inspection team's internal investigation, ever since you were appointed head of the Treasury Department, the financial offices of the Western region, including the Duchy of Camelot, deliberately manipulated official records to create illegal slush funds. We have also uncovered multiple cases in which bribes were accepted using money embezzled through manipulated tax revenues." Sanjay immediately panics. "That can't be true. There must be some kind of mistake." The inspector remains calm. "We'll determine the truth during the investigation." Because of this, both the department head and the officer responsible for the Western region's report will be taken into custody. Rena freezes. Something doesn't make sense. Just yesterday, Connie had completed the report for the Western region. Originally, someone else had been responsible for that report, but the work had been dumped on Connie instead. Rena had even helped her finish it. One of the officers turns toward Connie. "Were you the one who prepared this report?" Connie quietly answers, "Yes." The soldiers immediately arrest her. Everyone connected to the case is taken into custody. The employees around Rena begin whispering once again. Did Connie really commit such a serious crime? Rina knows the answer. There is no way Connie would ever do something like that. She wants to speak up. She wants to defend her friend. But she knows that raising her voice now would accomplish nothing. It would only get her arrested as well. At that moment, Rina finally understands everything. It wasn't a coincidence that the person originally responsible for the Western Territory handed the work over to Connie. It had all been planned from the beginning. Sanjay had deliberately set her up to become the scapegoat. Rina clenches her fists. She refuses to let him get away with it. Numbers never lie. The evidence still exists. And she is determined to expose Sanjay's crimes and clear Connie's name. Later that night, the cafe had finally closed. Kyle quietly cleaned the tables before preparing to leave. Finishing work always felt satisfying. Still, something puzzled him. Not a single customer had finished their coffee that day. In fact, almost every customer left most of it behind. Business was steadily improving, yet no one ever seemed to enjoy the coffee. Kyle couldn't understand why. He used only the highest quality coffee beans and an expensive espresso machine. No matter how much he thought about it, he couldn't figure out what the problem was. Just then, someone knocked on the door. Kyle walked over and called out, "I'm sorry, but we're closing for the day." When he opened the door, he found Rina standing outside. She looked slightly nervous, clutching an envelope in her hands. Of all the places she wanted to visit, this cafe had been at the very bottom of the list. She had promised herself that she would never get involved in the events of the original story. But now she had no other choice. To everyone else, this looked like an ordinary cafe. In reality, it was the headquarters of the Emperor's Secret Information Guild. Kyle, the cafe owner, was actually the leader of the guild and one of the Emperor's closest confidants. That was exactly why Rina had come. She needed to gather as much information as possible to save Connie. As long as she avoided revealing how she knew certain things, she could still protect her friend. Even if she submitted a report through normal channels, there was a chance the evidence would be buried or covered up. The only way to save Connie was to deliver the information directly to the Emperor. Taking a deep breath, Rina gathered her courage and stepped inside. Kyle greeted her politely. "What brings you here?" Rina couldn't help noticing that the novel's description had been completely accurate. Kyle really was just as handsome as everyone said. Still, she couldn't help thinking, isn't it strange for a cafe owner to ask a customer why they came instead of asking what they'd like to order? Trying to act naturally, Rina smiled. "I'd like a cup of coffee. Is it still all right to order?" Kyle stared at her for a moment before replying in a cold voice. "Are you serious? I asked because it looked like you came here for a completely different reason." Rina's heart skipped a beat. Could it be? Did he figure everything out the moment I walked in? Is this what makes the leader of the Imperial Intelligence Guild so different from everyone else? To Rina's surprise, Kyle suddenly smiled brightly. "Or perhaps," he said enthusiastically, "you came because you wanted me to buy something from you? Maybe you've come to tell me about some promising new investment opportunity? I mean, you didn't actually come here just for coffee, did you?" Rina stood there, completely stunned. Kyle cheerfully guided her to a table. "We don't usually get customers at this time of day," he said with a smile. "Especially people who simply come to enjoy a cup of coffee. I'll bring the menu right away." Rina quietly let out a sigh of relief. At least she hadn't been exposed the moment she walked through the door. She certainly hadn't expected Kyle to have this kind of personality. Maybe the original novel hadn't described him perfectly after all. A few moments later, Kyle served her a cup of coffee. "Please enjoy." Rina noticed him staring at her with an unusually intense gaze. She couldn't understand why he was watching her so closely. What a strange person, she thought. Finally, she took her first sip. The moment the coffee touched her tongue, she nearly choked. What in the world is this? Why does it taste like this? Is this actually coffee? Or poison? For a split second, she seriously considered spitting it out. Seeing the expression on her face, Kyle calmly spoke. "It seems the flavor doesn't suit your taste. I've worked hard on this blend, which is unfortunate, but there's no need to force yourself to drink it. You can simply leave it like everyone else." Rina suddenly misunderstood everything. "So this is the test. He deliberately served me terrible coffee to measure my patience and determination. And when he mentioned the other customers, he meant they all failed. That means this is my final test. Of course, Every single one of those conclusions existed only inside Rena's imagination. Completely unaware of her misunderstanding, Kyle simply waited. Rena suddenly smiled. Please wait. I'm going to finish every last drop. For Connie's sake, I have to pass this test. Treating the coffee like medicine, she picked up the cup and drank the entire thing in one gulp. Not a single drop remained. Kyle stared at the empty cup in complete disbelief. His eyes filled with tears. This is incredible. You are the first customer in the entire history of this cafe to finish a whole cup without leaving a single drop. As the owner, I'm honestly deeply moved. Rena became even more confused. She still wasn't sure whether the test had ended. Thinking he had spoken some kind of secret code, she decided to respond with one of her own. Like a blue hawk soaring across the vast open sky, it has guided me straight to this very place. Kyle blinked in confusion. Meanwhile, Rena desperately prayed that she could somehow get through this conversation without making another mistake. After a brief silence, Kyle finally asked, So, what kind of business brings you here today? Are you here to buy information? Or are you here to sell it? Rena quietly handed him the envelope. Kyle carefully opened it and began reading. Inside was a complete collection of financial records concerning Duke Camelot and every noble family under his influence. The documents contained enough evidence to support every accusation against them. After reading everything, Kyle looked back at Rena. I'll be honest. It will be difficult to offer you a high price for this information. Rena looked puzzled. Why? Kyle calmly explained. The value of information depends entirely on how rare and exclusive it is. Everything you've brought me has been carefully organized using public records and documents from the Ministry of Finance. If the Inspection Bureau continues its investigation, all of this will eventually become public knowledge anyway. If anyone could uncover the same information with enough time and effort, then it's difficult to justify paying a large amount for it. Rena smiled confidently. I think you're only looking at one side of the situation. Rarity is certainly important. But isn't timing just as valuable? If the right information reaches the right person at exactly the right moment, and they can act on it immediately, then that information becomes priceless. Of course, if you aren't interested in acting quickly or winning the race against time, then there's nothing more for us to discuss. Kyle smiled. I was already interested the moment you walked through that door. You knew exactly who we are and what this guild really is. You are definitely not an ordinary woman. I have to admit, you've won this round. You have a remarkable talent for negotiation. Rena smiled with relief. At last, they had reached an agreement. Kyle folded the documents. Now then, what are your conditions? Before accepting the deal, however, he asked one final question. How were you so certain that now was the perfect time to bring me this information? Rena answered without hesitation. I heard that His Majesty has already decided to bring down Duke Camelot. If he intends to eliminate every corrupt noble who abused their position during the war, then he has to act before they have time to destroy the remaining evidence. The best way to do that is through a sudden investigation without warning. And to launch that investigation, he needs solid evidence. That's why I believed these documents would be most valuable right now. Kyle was genuinely impressed. Then he asked, And where exactly did you obtain this information? A moment later, his expression turned serious. Was it Count Rankles? Or perhaps Miss Rena Diaz? Rena froze. How did he know her name? She had never introduced herself. And why had he suddenly mentioned Count Rankles? Kyle continued in a calm but cold voice. If Count Rankles had sent you, he would also have told you where to find us, the secret password, and the true identity of this guild. So if that isn't the case, how did you discover that this guild serves His Majesty directly? Rena's mind raced. She knew the answer because she had read the original novel. But there was no way she could tell him that. Instead, she answered confidently. The guild's contact phrase mentions the Blue Hawk. Everyone knows the Blue Hawk was His Majesty's symbol back when he was still the Grand Duke. According to the Empire's history, the descendants of the goddess had inherited the right to use the goddess's crest. However, the previous emperor, who had stolen the throne from the rightful heir, forbade the young Grand Duke from using that sacred symbol. As a result, the Blue Hawk became his personal emblem instead. It was meant as an insult, branding the rightful heir as nothing more than a collateral branch of the imperial family. But after reclaiming the throne through a bloody purge, the Blue Hawk became a symbol recognized throughout the empire. Kyle stared at her in surprise. She had uncovered the guild's true identity from a single historical detail. Rena continued, "Besides, who else would dare use the Blue Hawk as their symbol? There isn't a Blue Hawk bookstore or a Blue Hawk herb shop anywhere on the continent. Even when people name their horses, they avoid using Blue Hawk. Instead, they choose names like Skyhawk or Aquahawk. The Emperor has never forbidden people from using it. But everyone is still careful." Kyle burst into laughter. "So it isn't just me. It seems everyone walks on eggshells around His Majesty." Then he looked at Rena. "I'm convinced. Tell me your conditions." Rena finally reached the point she had been waiting for. "I'll be direct. My best friend was arrested because of this case. Her name is Connie. She works in the Treasury Department. I want to save her." Kyle sighed. "Plea bargains aren't under my authority." Rena refused to back down. "You've already seen the documents. You know the real criminals are Sanjay and Andrew. They were released after questioning and are comfortably living under house arrest. Meanwhile, my friend is locked inside a detention center, still being interrogated. We're not even allowed to bring her a blanket or a change of clothes. Isn't that obviously unfair? Connie is innocent. If you can't arrange her release, then at least introduce me to someone who can prove her innocence." Kyle quietly studied her. "You have absolute faith in your friend." Rena nodded without hesitation. "We've been best friends since our academy days." The moment Kyle heard the word academy, something in his expression changed. After a brief silence, he smiled. "Thank you for answering all of my questions. Because of my position, I have to be cautious. But now, we have a deal. Come back here at the same time next week. Until then, I personally guarantee Miss Connie's safety." Rena's face lit up with relief. Just as she was about to leave, Kyle suddenly smiled again. "Before you go, would you like another cup of coffee?" The excitement in his voice immediately terrified Rena. She hurried toward the door. "I think I'll be leaving now." To her, those words sounded far scarier than any threat. She silently swore that she would never drink Kyle's coffee again. At that very moment, another man stepped out from the room in the back. It was none other than Rainier. Looking toward Kyle, he calmly asked, "So, do you think today's meeting was really just another coincidence?" Kyle admits it's hard to explain, but it's definitely strange. Rainier says he never imagined she would come here, offer to make a deal, and even bring exactly the information they needed most right now. He asks Kyle if he had investigated her properly. Kyle replies that he did everything he could. Rainier then goes through all the documents on Rena. Her mother was the second daughter of a count, while her father was a commoner and an orphanage graduate. Her father was later appointed as a full professor at the academy and received the title of Baron, though it exists in name only. In truth, he's closer to being a commoner than a true noble. Miss Rena has also been working at the Imperial Palace continuously since graduating from the academy, and there are no suspicious gaps in her history. Rainier wonders what the chances are that Rena could be one of Camelot's pawns. Kyle insists that's absolutely impossible. Count Rankel's family and the Duke have been famous rivals for years. Since Rena is Count Rankel's niece, there's no way she wouldn't know that her family's ties were supposedly severed because of a marriage between different social classes. But that was only a nominal excuse, and the current Count is actually on fairly good terms with the family in question. Kyle adds that since the Count has no heir, there's a high chance Miss Rena will inherit the title in the future. Given that, she has no reason to switch sides and join the Duke of Camelot. Even Rainier admits that if this were a setup, there are a couple of sloppy details, along with a few coincidences that wouldn't have been difficult to orchestrate intentionally. That earlier incident was probably just simple kindness, since no one could have possibly known that his late younger sister's favorite flower was Frisia. Still, he can't dismiss everything as mere coincidence. He tells Kyle that he will attend the meeting 1 week from now in person. Kyle is confused about why he insists on this, but Rainier is determined to see everything with his own eyes and question her personally. 1 week later, after work, Rena is about to leave her office when she overhears some colleagues talking. Since Donovan isn't around to nag them anymore, they finally feel like they can breathe. They've actually been leaving work on time every day now, joking that they hope their manager never comes back. They also talk badly about Connie. They say they feel sorry for whoever's friend became a criminal, and wonder what Connie was even thinking when she helped her manager commit a crime. At such a young age, she's likely to end up in prison for a long time. Rina overhears this and chooses to ignore it. She's determined that with the information she's gathering, she will clear Connie's name once and for all, starting with today's meeting. She arrives at the cafe, and as she opens the door, Kyle greets her. She's surprised to see there are still customers inside, wondering why anyone would come here just for coffee. Kyle leads her into another room and tells her to wait, since the conversation might take a while. He then tells her to head down to the basement. It all feels suspicious to Rina, but she reminds herself she's doing this for Connie's sake. She just hopes there isn't a kidnapper waiting for her down there. When she reaches the basement, she finds someone sitting there, and the coat he's wearing looks familiar. It's none other than Rainier. He greets her with a simple hello. Rina is too worn out to even feel surprised anymore. She recalls wondering why he always looked disgusted whenever they ran into each other, and now she understands he was connected to Information Guild all along. Without a second thought, she asks him straight out if Connie is doing okay. Rainier says that's an unexpected question. Rina doesn't understand what's so unexpected about it. He explains that he assumed the first thing she would ask was why he was here, implying she already knew his identity and had been deliberately following him. He asks if he was wrong. Rina is frustrated by this. She thinks he's the one who's been following her and showing up wherever she goes. She figures he might just be a little confused, though she admits he's handsome enough that someone could easily make that kind of mistake. Rainier suddenly stands up and asks if she's feeling hot. Rina is flustered by the question, all because of him. In her head, she tells herself to get it together and not fall for a handsome guy like this. This has to be some kind of trick to gain the upper hand in the negotiation. She promises herself she won't fall for it that easily. Suddenly, the door opens and Kyle walks in, telling them the last customers have left, so they've closed the cafe early. There's no need to worry about their conversation leaking out. Kyle walks over and stands behind Rainier, who then says, "Shall we talk business?" And with that, the negotiation begins. Rina looks a little flustered hearing this, which brings a small smile to Rainier's face. He thinks she's genuinely fascinating. She couldn't hide her expression at all a moment ago, but the mention of business immediately calmed her down again. Even when he asked if she'd been following him, she looked like she was internally cursing him out. He hopes her transparent expressions mean she isn't hiding anything. Kyle mentions that since the conversation will be long, they'll need something to drink. Rainier orders whiskey and asks Rina if she'd like some fruit wine. She replies that she isn't good with alcohol. Kyle suggests coffee instead, which makes her flustered. She says anything but coffee would be fine, clearly annoyed that he'd offer her coffee knowing exactly how bad it tastes there. Kyle brings out the wine and beer. Rainier picks up his glass and tells Rina that her friend Connie is doing fine and hasn't received any unfair treatment during the investigation. However, it's difficult to release her right away. Rina picks up her glass of wine and takes a sip. She tells him the deal was that in exchange for the evidence to catch the Duke of Camelot, Connie would be released. Rainier explains that the evidence isn't enough on its own. They need additional evidence and have to verify the authenticity of the documents. The inspection team is investigating day and night, so results should be out soon, and then her friend will be proven innocent and released. He notes that the inspection team is working incredibly hard. By this point, Rina is getting a little drunk. She understands that the inspection team is under a lot of pressure right now, and it will just take a bit more time before Connie is released. Rainier promises that if the documents turn out to be genuine, her friend will be released soon. Suddenly, Rina blurts out that he's really terribly distrustful of people. She says this while intoxicated, then immediately looks shocked at herself, unsure why she said it. She apologizes, blaming it on the alcohol and insisting she didn't mean to be rude. Rainier just smiles and tells her it's fine. It's nice to see her honest side. He sets his glass down and asks if she's hiding anything from him, telling her she should confess everything honestly right now. He's already gotten much closer to her. Rina can't hold back any longer. She grabs his collar and tells him that even before coming here, she'd always thought he was incredibly handsome. Rainier is caught completely off guard. Then suddenly Rina collapses. He catches her and tries to wake her up, asking if she's feeling unwell. She's sweating heavily and clearly unconscious. Rainier immediately calls Kyle and tells him to get a doctor right away. After a while, a doctor examines Rina and explains that it's nothing serious. She had drunk fruit wine made with yellowberries, and in rare cases, some people have an overreaction to the ingredient. There are no major side effects, and she should wake up soon. Rainier feels a pang of guilt, realizing they had given her that drink on purpose to try to get information out of her. Kyle admits he only wanted the tension-relieving effect of the yellowberries and didn't expect Miss Rina to actually collapse. It's generally a harmless ingredient. Kyle tells the doctor that just to be safe, they should bring some emergency medicine from the lab, and the two of them leave together. Now Rainier is alone with Rina in the room. He realizes he acted out of haste and made a mistake. He decides he'll have to apologize properly once she wakes up. Fortunately, it seems she really wasn't hiding anything from him. He recalls her earlier words, when she said she thought he was incredibly handsome. Remembering this makes him blush slightly. It was essentially a confession from her. Suddenly, Rina starts to stir. Rainier moves quickly to help her sit up. Rina asks him what he did to her, half joking that he must have poisoned her and failed, and now she's going to die an even more miserable death. Rainier is flustered by her reaction and apologizes, explaining that she collapsed because of the drink they prepared, one that contains an ingredient meant to relieve tension and make people more honest than usual. Rina realizes he did that because he suspected she was hiding something and wanted to make her confess. Rainier admits to this and tells her that he now realizes she wasn't hiding anything from him at all. He sincerely apologizes for deceiving her. This leaves Rina speechless for a moment. She tells him it was truly despicable of him to treat her this way, but she'll let it go, chalking it up to the unique nature of working for the Information Guild. Still, since he failed to handle the situation properly, she insists he take full responsibility for helping Connie. Rainier promises he absolutely will. Rina says she'll head home now to get some rest. As she starts to leave, she notices Rainier following her. Confused, she asks why. He tells her he has to escort her back. He can't just let someone who collapsed because of him walk home alone in the middle of the night. This makes Rina blush a little, though she insists she's completely fine on her own. As they walked outside, Rina started feeling a little shy. She thought to herself that if she really stopped to consider it, this was quite an unexpected situation. To think she was actually walking down the street alongside this man. They had kept running into each other time after time before, but she never imagined she'd end up so closely connected to him like this. Rainier asks Rina if she usually takes this road to get home. He notes that it looks quite dark and rather dangerous for a young woman to walk alone. Rina explains that it's perfectly fine. She's lived here for several years now and has gotten used to it. Rainier is surprised that she's been walking this road for years, especially since a public cemetery sits right next to the path. Rina says that's exactly right, and that's precisely why the housing prices here are so much cheaper than anywhere else. She mentions how long she had to save up just to afford her place. For ordinary people like her, a dark road at night is nowhere near as frightening as rent that keeps climbing higher every month. She had a friend who used to live nearby, but she moved away because she was too scared of the cemetery. Rina, though, has never really been the type to be afraid of things like that. Rainier says he's truly relieved to hear that it seems there's no one from her past who's turned into a restless spirit and comes to haunt her dreams every night. Rina asks Rainier if he's a knight. Rainier wonders why she's calling him that. Actually, the name they've been using for him so far is just a placeholder, a made-up name he gave her at their first meeting. He never told her his real name, and he figures there's no urgent need to correct her about it right now. Since we don't know Rainier's real name yet, let's just wait and see what it turns out to be. Until then, we'll keep calling him Rainier. Rainier asks what exactly made her think he was a knight. She explains that the very first time they met, he treated her injury and moved with such incredible speed and agility that she naturally assumed he must be a trained warrior or military officer. Given that he works directly under the Emperor as some kind of intelligence agent, she figured he must hold at least an official rank equivalent to that of a knight. She also assumes he fought alongside the Emperor during the recent war, and that he must have gone through so many experiences that words could never truly capture. It's very possible that some of the terrible things he saw and did back then are still keeping him awake at night. But thanks to brave people like him, she's able to sleep soundly every night without a single worry. She tells him she's truly grateful for that, and bows to him. This catches Rainier off guard, and he quickly gets up to leave. His last words before going are that she's actually surprisingly quite the flatterer. As he walks away with his back turned, She thinks he might be blushing and simply doesn't want her to see. She calls after him that she wasn't trying to flatter him at all. She meant every word, and she's certain every citizen of the Empire feels exactly the same way. This leaves Rainier completely speechless. After walking a bit further, Rina tells him they're almost there and he can leave her right here. He doesn't need to walk her all the way to her door. Rainier insists he wants to make sure she gets all the way home safely. Rina just smiles and tells him that a proper lady can't simply reveal exactly where she lives to a man she isn't related to or married to. But in her head, she thinks that if he really wanted to find out, he could easily do so anyway. Hearing this, Rainier says a proper goodbye, telling her he truly hopes her home isn't too much further from here, before turning to leave. As he walks away, he asks if, should they happen to meet again sometime in the future, she would start addressing him as Sir Rainier. Rina smiles and tells him she'll do exactly that. Sir Rainier. Rina thinks he seems to care quite a lot about titles and formal address. More than she expected perhaps because he was originally raised and trained as a knight. Either way, she's done everything she set out to do today. All that's left now is to wait and hope that Connie returns safely soon. The next day at the office, a girl named Heather comes to tell Rina that a knight from the inspection bureau is waiting outside the building, asking to meet her. Rina has no idea what this could be about. The knight greets her outside and explains why he's specifically looking for her tonight. He says he's come because there's something he needs to tell her. They've received an official order to bring her along, so she can personally check and confirm the safety and well-being of Miss Connie, who is currently being held in the Imperial Palace. Rina is overjoyed that she's finally going to see Connie, but the knight warns her that this order is completely secret and she shouldn't tell anyone in public about it. He tells her to pack up her belongings and come with him. Rina happily agrees. Thanks to Rina, the story has moved faster than originally expected, and she's glad that Sir Rainier kept his promise exactly as he said he would. As she's packing her things, someone calls out to her from behind. A colleague who works in the same office as her and Connie, asking if she's leaving work early. Rina explains that something unexpected has come up. Someone asks what exactly that something is, and one of them says smugly that they knew she'd end up getting dragged into this whole mess with Connie. Heather tells everyone she saw a knight from the inspection bureau come looking for Rina just now. She wonders aloud if Connie dragged Rina into this too, maybe to try to reduce her sentence somehow, or if they're finally letting her visit Connie now that a sentence has been officially decided and confirmed. The colleagues start laughing about Connie's situation, and Rina grows angry. Not only do these people constantly gossip and whisper behind others' backs, now they have the nerve to say it right to her face. She decides to ignore them completely, knowing there's no reason to waste her time or energy on them, especially not when she's about to go see Connie. One of them shouts after her, taunting that Connie has no idea how many extremely high-ranking and powerful people are actually involved in this whole incident, adding that there are even rumors the noble house of Count Rankle is somehow deeply connected to it as well. Hearing this, Rina turns back and tells them that's really such interesting news. She'll be sure to tell her uncle everything they just said, because, as it happens, the Count they're talking about right now is her own dear uncle. She adds, almost wickedly, that she'd better go tell him immediately before she forgets any of it. This makes the colleagues around her freeze in fear, since they had no idea her uncle was the Count. Rina is still fuming over this. She thinks that once Connie's situation is resolved and she's released, she's going to dig up every single wrongdoing these colleagues have committed and make sure they pay for it until they're in tears. She reflects that over the past few days, she's heard her uncle's name mentioned constantly. It's true that he's an incredibly powerful and influential figure throughout the Empire, but the honest truth is that she and her uncle don't get along very well at all. After a while, Rina and the knight arrive at the place where Connie is being held. Rina sees that it looks shabby, dark, and freezing cold. She's shocked they wouldn't even give Connie a single blanket to keep warm, and she hopes Connie has been taking care of herself and hasn't fallen ill somehow. As she moves toward Connie's cell, she's shocked by what she sees inside. Rina rushes forward, grabs the bars, and shouts Connie's name. It's unclear exactly what's happening, but it's clear that whatever Rina sees inside that cell has left her shocked. Rina wasn't sad. She was simply in shock. Connie had turned her prison cell into a luxury room. It didn't look like a prison cell at all. She decorated it herself shortly after being brought in. When Rina arrived, Connie was lying on the bed, eating chips and reading a book, as if she were on vacation. Rina remembered that Rainier had promised Connie's safety would be guaranteed. She never expected him to go this far for her. Confused, Connie asked what Rina was doing there. Rina told her not to worry. Someone from Rainier's side had come to check on her and let her in. Connie was relieved to hear this. She came closer and told Rina that someone from the magistrate's office had already visited her, saying she'd been cleared of all charges. She'd been worried that someone else might be taking the fall in her place. Now she realized Rina had a connection to the person behind it, though she still didn't fully understand what was happening. Rina told her it was a long story and promised to explain everything once they were out of there. It didn't take much longer after that. Rainier's methods had been swift and ruthless, pushing the real culprit to the edge, and that's exactly what happened. News of the Duke's arrest spread across the land. His corruption, his crimes against imperial law, and his bribery scheme meant to drain the imperial treasury were all exposed, backed by a massive amount of evidence gathered from his own territory. Based on that evidence, several nobles connected to the crime were also arrested. It became known that the emperor himself had led the raid on the Duke's territory personally. Once again, his ruthlessness became the talk of the town. Meanwhile, Connie was finally out of prison. Her colleagues gathered to congratulate her on her safe return, and she was happy to soak in the moment. As she greeted them one by one, she assured everyone she was perfectly fine. The same people who used to gossip about her behind her back were now all smiles to her face, saying how glad they were that nothing bad had happened to her. One of them mentioned that Sanjay had been arrested the night before. He was the real culprit all along. They agreed someone like that deserved prison. Rina cut them off, telling them not to worry. His Majesty would handle it properly. She was still angry about their two-faced behavior in front of Connie and made a mental note to deal with them later. The head of the department then called everyone back to work. Before getting started, Connie pulled Rina aside to show her something, a bag full of gold coins. Rina asked what it was for, and Connie explained it was compensation for everything she'd been through. She was thrilled with the amount and ready to put the whole ordeal behind her. The others mentioned that the Duke had lost his title and had all his land and wealth stripped away. His Majesty had originally intended to execute him on the spot, but a pro-emperor noble had begged for mercy, pleading with him to consider the family's long history. In the end, the Duke's life was spared. Connie laughed and said that whoever paid him off must have been someone truly powerful. Long live His Majesty, the Emperor. Rina, on the other hand, thought to herself that even as a criminal, he was still a Duke of the Empire, and yet the Emperor had nearly executed him without hesitation. He truly was a terrifying man. After this whole ordeal, she promised herself she'd never get tangled up with him again. Connie then reminded Rina that the birthday festival was coming up soon and asked if she had any plans. It would be the first birthday festival since His Majesty took the throne, and rumor had it this one would be the biggest in the Empire's history. On the final evening, fireworks would light up the sky, backed by an incredible 300 mages. Rina was stunned. 300 mages, all in one place. Connie told her that no matter how busy she was, she had to at least watch the fireworks on the third day. She promised to treat Rina to something delicious at the night market. Rina agreed. It sounded good, and the two promised to enjoy the festival together to celebrate Connie's release. With that settled, they hurried back to finish their work. The first day, the birthday festival was celebrated across the entire empire in honor of the emperor's birthday. On this day, people gathered at the temple to pray for the empire's peace and prosperity, invoking the blessing of the goddess Minas upon the land. By the second day, Rina and Connie were buried in office work, and it felt like absolute chaos. Even during this magnificent festival, they were stuck putting in extra hours. Connie joked that at this point, prison might have been more relaxing than the office. Connie had almost finished her work, but Rina still had more to get through, with the head of department and Andrew both detained. Their workload had fallen onto her. Connie, unaware of this, offered to help, but Rina insisted it wasn't necessary and told her to head out since she was already done. Connie reminded her that last time, she'd gotten caught in the crossfire because of Andrew's work, so Rina told her firmly that she'd handle everything herself. Connie should just go enjoy the festival. Hearing this, Connie got a little emotional and agreed, telling Rina not to push herself too hard before heading home. Rina stayed behind, working alone in the office late into the night. Eventually, she decided to step outside for some fresh air and catch a glimpse of the festival. From a distance, she could see the imperial palace, still glowing with lights even this late at night. Tonight was the ball, a grand social gathering for the nobles inside the palace, one of the festival's main events. It had nothing to do with Rina. The ball was for nobles only. As she stood near a tree, someone suddenly ran past her. She turned, and it was none other than His Majesty, Rainier, wearing the mask worn during the ball's masquerade dance. For a moment, she thought he was an assassin and froze in fear. But Rainier stepped closer, pressed a finger to his lips, and told her to stay quiet. When he pulled off his mask, Rina realized it was Rainier all along. Voices could be heard approaching from the other side. Someone was following him. Rainier apologized to Rina, telling her he'd explain everything later. For now, he had one request. Could she please help him hide? And just like that, the ball, the festival, and the Emperor's true face all came crashing into one unexpected moment. What was Rainier really hiding from? And why did he choose Rina, of all people, to help him? That's where we'll leave things for today. If you enjoyed this recap, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe so you don't miss the next part of this story. Drop a comment below and let me know what you think is going on with Rainier. I'd love to hear your theories. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.